Okay, welcome back. It's been a while. Been a while. So we were speaking about Birkat Hamazon. We started to speak about it. We talked about concept of Al Naharot Bavel, which none of us actually says. And then we spoke about Shiur HaMa'alot. We spoke about the Tefilah Hashem, which is not an anti-Zionist expression, as some people wanted to say. And I think we spoke about the Zimun a bit, didn't we? Yeah. Yeah. Did we talk about women's Zimun?
Yes, I think we did.
Did we? I missed that one. Okay.
I
don't remember hearing you talk about that.
No, I don't think we did either. So I think we'll just pick up there and talk about the Zimun. It might be worth having a look at what the Shulchan Aruch says, actually, because surprisingly enough, the Shulchan Aruch does actually discuss it. Let's first of all look at the Gemara in Brachot. Could you pull me out the Brachot, volume 1 from the top right-hand corner, 20b? It's on, and it discusses there in Gemara Brachos whether women are obligated
to bench.
They are obligated to bench, whether it is a deoraita for women or whether it is a d'Rabbanan. So, thank you. Let's just find that.
It's not really time bound, is it?
Well, let's have a look what the Gemara says.
He's reached on the clock every day.
It is.
It is time bound to a degree.
It's not like it's a set time every day.
But
It depends on whether you say that Vachalka applies to women.
okay, so
Because
the
the
Gemara
condition is that you ate and you were
the Gemara
not a
begins.
time-bound thing.
The Gemara begins with a question of women. The Mishnah says that the women are patur from Kriyat Shema. Kriyat Shema. Why? That's obvious because it's a time-bound mitzvah. A mitzvah shazman grama. Okay, that's a very time-bound mitzvah, isn't it? Because you've only got a certain
52 minutes.
Okay, when you can say it. All right, so that's fine. We accept that, but there's various different questions, and then it says a bit tefillin. Same thing with tefillin. Mitzvah tasei shazman grama, and then it comes on to discuss benching. I just have to find it. Okay, then it goes to talk about kiddush actually before it talks about. Here we go. Hagemara dana im nashim chayavot birkat hamazon min haTorah. So the Gemara asks a question: are women obligated according to the Torah, deoraita? Because the Torah says, where is the source for benching? Okay, where is that from? Devarim, yes, very good. Which chapter? Chapter 8. Very good. Well done. Okay, so maybe says the Gemara, maybe they're patur from the mitzvah of Birkat Hamazon because it's a time-bound mitzvah, or maybe chiyuv nashim b'Birkat Hamazon d'Rabbanan hu. Maybe it's a Rabbanan. Why? Shekivan shebemitzvat Birkat Hamazon katuv uveirachta et Hashem Elokecha al haaretz hatova asher natan lach, which means you shall bless Hashem, your God, for the land, the good land, Eretz HaTova, which He has given you. Okay, but maybe women are patur from that. Why?
I've got another comment.
Wait. Why? Why would women be patur from that
Because
bracha?
they don't have to fight for the land.
Not quite. They
They're
don't, actually,
busy in the house all day, like they have to stay in the house. No?
they don't actually have an inheritance in the land. Women,
Yes, I do.
What about daughters and
Well,
sons?
yeah, it's all
only in that, only.
It's
Okay, so in that case, only the daughters of Sloch should
Oh,
bench.
cheaper and they're similar to.
Okay, well, that correct. That would be
Well,
a
it
mask.
doesn't say that.
No, that would be a mask honor. We're talking about women who are not in their situation. This is only a havamina of the Gemara at this stage. This is only a hypothesis of the Gemara at this stage. It's saying maybe women are patur from that because they don't get a chelik in the aretz. In Cain, if so, yesh loma, there's a position to say shemina Torah pturot hein mi birkat hamazon. So you could say that there's two reasons there why they may be patur from birkat hamazon, from benching, according to the Torah, midoraita. So now they're going to talk about, the Gemara then goes on to talk about the two different
Comment.
sides.
I was once taught that you have to say Birkat Hamazon within 72 minutes of eating, which makes it time bound.
No,
Correct.
because it doesn't tell you when you can eat
No, but-
anytime you like.
Yeah,
So it's up to you.
but I can eat any time I like, but from the time I've eaten,
It's
I've
not-
got a time
Yeah,
period.
Paul's right in that
There's a time
there is a
space
time scale,
in
but
which I have to
it's
say
not
it.
the same as the time as
not
as
fixed.
what
It's not fixed.
mitzvah man groma means.
Well-
There's only a certain time that you can do this. So like Kriyat Shema is the perfect example. You can only fulfill the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema up to the first third of the day, right? After that,
But Kriyat Shema Lamitah, you can say all night.
well, that isn't a mitzvah d'oraita.
Mm.
Okay, so the mitzvah asay shazman grama. Okay, so for example, lulav.
Now, I understand the
You can only do
concept,
it on that one
but-
day.
but
What Paul is saying is right. You can choose to eat whenever you've got time. Why are women patur from commandments that are time bound?
They're busy doing everything else.
Yeah,
Exactly. Got to fit it in.
they're busy looking after the kids
Children.
and
Where did we learn
Cooking
the
for the
72 hours?
Going out.
okay. 70. I'll tell you where 72 hours.
It's not with the writer.
Not 72 hours. 72 minutes.
Sorry, it's not with the writer.
No, 72 minutes is the shiur of the time when you are no longer satisfied from a meal, which is why, by the way, that is the source of the Dutch minhag
of 1 hour.
of keeping one
Yeah.
halachic hour,
Yeah.
which at certain times of the year is 72 minutes.
If you have
Okay.
people over for supper's lunch, for example, it's very rare that you're going to be ready to bench in 72 minutes.
No, 72 minutes after you finish.
Ah,
Right, after you finish, not after you
yeah,
start.
yeah, you can say.
Yeah. 72 minutes after you're finished, because that's the shiur of time where you are still sated from the meal. Okay,
Satiated.
I suppose it depends how big a meal you've had. So
Well, you said that, you said that last time. Out.
yeah, I mean 72 minutes. You know, if you have a small meal, you might be hungry again, and if you have an enormous meal, you might not be hungry for 5 hours. But that's the shiur that is given. So anyway, those are the two studying. The Gemara then goes into this whole thing as to whether women are obliged d'oraita or d'rabbanan. Fact is, they are obliged, but they may not be obliged according to some opinion. According to some opinions, but obliged by the Torah. Now, therefore, if you say that women are obliged to say Birkat Hamazon d'oraita, Torah law, what implication does that have?
They can bench from men.
Yes, they can bench for men. And if they are only d'Rabbanan, they can't. Why not, Paul?
It's a lesser obligation.
Yeah, you have to be a bar chiyuva. That is why a child under bar mitzvah cannot do a mitzvah, cannot be yotz for somebody else. He can't blow the shofar for somebody. He can't lane in the Torah. He can't be a shliach tzibur, because only somebody who is a bar chiyuva, which means somebody who has an obligation to do that particular mitzvah, can fulfill that mitzvah for
Haven't we
somebody else.
had a late Tefilah under the age of 13 here?
Only for Kabbalat Shabbat,
Yeah.
which is not part of the
Ah,
Tefilah,
yeah.
and for laning only for Maftir,
Brachas in the morning.
And the
Which-
age of Bar
Brachas in the
Mitzvah.
morning.
brachas in the morning,
Anim
because
Samira?
they're not really,
So what do we do with Anim Samira?
Anim Zamira, it's not chiyuv, not part of the davening, these
no,
are
it's
just,
Add-ons.
yeah, what is the Shliach Tzibur doing? It's really only Chazarat Hashatz and Baruch Hu and Kaddish. Those are the only things that are chiyuvim for the Baal Tefilah, right? So an under Bar Mitzvah couldn't say Baruch Hu on your behalf, couldn't say Kaddish, couldn't say Chazarat Hashatz,
Can he make a dish?
and couldn't say Kedusha either.
You've been saying Shiur Malach.
No, he can't, like on Shabbat, he can't say Kiddush at home.
He can't say Kiddush on behalf of somebody else. No, he cannot say, an under Bar Mitzvah cannot say Kiddush for an adult. If Shabbos morning.
Wait, and does that mean a woman cannot say Kiddush for other people?
We skipped the bit about whether women are a chayav on Kiddush.
Can we?
If you want, we'll go back and have a look. But it all depends on whether women are considered.
What about Havdalah?
One sec. If women are obliged in the mitzvah, so for example, Megillah, women are obliged in hearing the Megillah, not Deoraisa, because there isn't a Deoraisa, but it's not Deoraisa for men either. So they have the same level of chiyuv. This is what Paul was saying before. Derabanan is not the same level as a chiyuv as a Deoraisa. So if women only, inverted commas, have to bench Derabanan, then they can't be Yotza men who have a Deoraita obligation. But let's say Megillah, they are both obligated. So there is a position where women could be Yotza a man with reading the Megillah. Okay, it's not done, generally speaking, but that is only because it's given. The reason given is because of kavod habriot. It's not the sort of done thing. If it became the done thing, then halachically,
That's like
probably is
Hanukkah
okay.
candles.
Huh?
That's like Hanukkah candles.
Hanukkah candles as well, because women are obliged in that. Yes, Johnny, you wanted to ask something.
Do you have to have washed before a meal to enable you to bench after a meal?
Okay, fair
And in
question.
that case, do women have to wash their hands first?
Okay, fair question. So let's analyze the question. Do you have to have washed before to enable you to say benching?
Depends what
You have to bench.
you have to bench.
You have to bench even if you haven't.
It's advisable.
Okay, so do you mean did you have to wash and eat bread, or do you mean did you just have to wash?
Well, wash and eat bread then. Let's put it
Okay,
that way.
let's take it in two sections. In order to be obligated to do the full Birkat Hamazon, I think we learned this last time, you have to eat bread, because bread is considered the halachic meal. Okay, everything else is not considered a meal. We might consider bread to be the tafel, not the ikar. What do I mean by that?
Is
like a side,
is
the side.
Yeah, the ikar is the main thing, and the tafel is the add-on. So, for example, when it comes to brachot, I'm going to talk about this next week, by the way, in the whiskey shiur.
There's no Shiur here next week.
No, we're having a whiskey shiur next week. So the tafel and the ikar, it's a very interesting halacha, this, because you can have two people eating the same thing and making different brachot. Okay, so let's say you have a chocolate covered strawberry, right? You have those lovely things that you get in some weddings that you go to, and they've got this chocolate fountain. Have you ever been to one of those?
Yeah, my
It's
son has
chocolate fountain, and they've got fruit there, and you stick a strawberry on the end of a stick, and it's covered in chocolate. Oh, it's delicious. And it all goes down your shirt. Yeah. So, what bracha do you make on that?
Depends how much strawberry and how much chocolate.
Not so much how much necessarily, but what you
Prefer.
Shahaka.
Yeah. So if you are a mad chocolate lover, and strawberries you can take them or leave them, you would make shahakol on
Yeah,
that because the strawberry is tafel to the ikar of the chocolate. For you, the chocolate is the ikar, is the main thing. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a strawberry or a orange or a peach or anything.
It's all subjective.
That's just what I said. So, however, if you're a strawberry lover and chocolate is, and in that case, you would make Brei Adama because the strawberry is the ikar. How did we get onto this?
Adama,
You were
strawberries
thinking
from the
about
ground.
Oh, the bread. That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how we got onto that.
But the Sudash shit is a meal. You don't have to have,
Okay, so no, but if you don't have bread, you don't bench.
but it's still a meal.
It's well, we call it a meal, but Sudash Lishit without bread is only b'di'evet. You're meant to have bread for Sudash Lishit. You're meant to have lechem mishnah for Sudash Lishit. You can, in certain circumstances, like for example, this year Erev Pesach, you cannot have bread or matzah for Sudash Lishit, so you have fruit and vegetables and what have you.
But when are you going to is there a time you're going to wait, is there a time you're going to discuss those things?
Wait, I'll mute you, be quiet. Wait, I've got to get this off otherwise I'm going to lose my train of thought. So the question was, do you have to wash and eat bread before you are obliged to bench? The answer is yes, because if you don't eat bread, then you are not considered to have had a meal in order to be satisfied. Halachically, you cannot be satisfied from a meal unless you have bread. Now, don't shoot me, I'm not only the messenger here. I know that doesn't make sense. You can have a 10-course meal without bread and be fully satisfied, but al pi halacha, first of all, you shouldn't do that. You should make sure that you have bread so that you are obligated to bench. But if you don't, and if there isn't any, then you're not obligated to bench and you shouldn't bench.
And what if you have you declare Sauda on Mezonot?
Okay, it's a different question altogether. Come back to it. Now, let me answer. So the answer to your question, Johnny, is you have to wash and eat bread before benching. Now, what I thought you were asking
was asking about a woman having to wash.
Okay, well, it doesn't make any difference. If you don't eat bread, you can't bench.
Right.
I thought you were asking a slightly different question. What I thought you were asking was, what if you forgot to wash, right? You didn't Netilat Yadayim. Even if you forgot to say Hamotzi Lechem Min Haaretz on the bread, but you ate bread, okay? So I thought what you were asking is, does the washing stop you, not washing stop you from, and the answer is no, they are separate mitzvot. You missed out on that mitzvah, you should have done it and you didn't do it, okay, naughty boy, you get an aveira for that. But it doesn't mean that you don't bench afterwards. You've eaten bread, if you've eaten an appropriate amount of bread, a kazait or a kabetza, depending on which opinion you take, then you have to do Birkat Hamazon. Makes no difference whether you're a man or a woman. There is an opinion that says a woman does it dirabanan and not deoraita, and because of that opinion, women cannot be yotza men with their benching. So if Barbara was benching and Paul wasn't, and he said amen to her brachot, wouldn't help. You'd still have to bench yourself.
Even if I didn't accept that, even if I accepted that it is the right thing.
Okay, well then you'd have to go according to that opinion. We'd have to have a look and see what how the modern poskim paskin on that. Wait, one sec. So we've got to go to Faye yet before I come.
Yeah,
to
you have to turn Faye back on.
I have to turn Faye back on in a minute. But what about women together? Right? They're all Durabanan. Okay, so there is a in the Shulchan Aruch, it's very clear that women can make a Mezuman. They can't join in a man's Mezuman, and they can't be Yotza a man because they're on a different level of obligation. It's nothing to do with sexism. It's just the fact is that they are not obligated in the same way. So 3 women eating together now can make a Mezuman. Say can as opposed to must with the men. With the men, it's an obligation. But with the women are allowed to make their own Mezuman and often do when there are 3 women together. When there's 3 women and 1 man, that mucks it all up.
Man has to go out.
Man has to go out if you want to do the Mezuman. Yeah. Okay, let me put Faye back on. Right, Faye, unmute yourself and ask me what you wanted to ask. Oh, she's gone. She's
Broigus.
she's Broigus. Okay.
She's gonna have to make her own.
She's Broigus. Okay, well, when she comes back, then we'll call her back in.
I'm
Are
presuming
you still there, Faye? I can sort of see her.
Are you there?
Switch yourself back on.
She might have turned you off.
No, I can see her. She's wandering around now. Okay. Faye, switch on. You're muted.
Okay. There we
Right.
go.
Now, what was your question, Faye?
No, I had a question of when are you going to discuss those kinds of things? Like, what's the difference? What do we have to do this Shabbos, in terms of like all the questions of like we do B'dikas Chametz, and this is off the topic, but when are you going to discuss those things?
It's not this Shabbos, it's the following Shabbos, so I'm going to discuss it. Actually, I'm going to have to send it to you in writing form because I'm going to discuss it this Shabbat afternoon in the Shabbat afternoon Shiur, which is effectively going to be the Shabbat Hagadol Drasha. So I'm going to do it this Shabbat afternoon, and I'll send you a summary of what you've got to do, Faye.
Okay,
Okay.
good. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Right. Yes, Hannah, you wanted to ask.
Question of what underage boys can do. What about Havdalah? Women are not obliged with Havdalah, and can an under bar mitzvah aged boy
Do
say
Havdalah for a woman?
For
a woman, yes. Probably. I'd have to look that up. Don't quote me. Probably is the answer.
Oh wait, that was the other question. Is a woman yotze to say Kiddush for, like, if there's no man there that could do it?
You don't have to.
To say Kiddush.
Hannah, let me just listen to Faye. Go on, Faye. What are you asking?
If there's no man there able to say Kiddush, can the men be yotze on a woman's Kiddush?
So if there's no men there, they can't be yotze, can they?
No men that can do Kiddush.
Oh, no men that can do it. Yes, in that case, there's a question whether they're even a bar chiyuva if they can't do it. But yes, if they can't do it,
They've never learned to read Hebrew.
okay. Does that put them in a category of a shaita? Don't know. Probably not. But if there's nobody there to do it, then yeah, if they can't do it, then a woman can be out. So they have to have a kiddush, or else they can't eat after that.
Ravida often said he made Daphne make Kiddush when he was very tired.
Yeah, so with Kiddush, it's different to benching because there's with Kiddush, you're being Mekadesh the Yom. Well, let's have a look what the Gemara says about Kiddush. Right, so women are chayav midrabanan on Kiddush. Okay, so what about the Aseres HaDibros, asks the Gemara. Aseres HaDibros says Zachor et Yom HaShabbat. Okay, and that was talking to men and women. So, okay, so Kol Sheyeshno Bishmira, Kol HaMitzvah Bishmirat Shabbat. Kloma, that is to say, Kol HaMitzvah Lishmor Ma Shekatuv Lo Ta'aseh Kol Malacha, etc., etc. That is in Zachor. Okay, when you say Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadsho, that's all the malachas you're not allowed to do. Okay. Hayom Tzuba b'mitzvat Zechirat Shabbat al Yidei Kiddush Hayom. So that is Kiddush Hayom. When you are Mekadesh the day, when you say Kiddush, you are sanctifying the day. That's part of Zachor v'Shamor. V'hanin Nashe Hoil v'itnu b'Shmira itnu b'Zchira. And Nashim, these women, since they have this obligation in Shmirat Shabbat, they are also obligated in Zachor. So according to this Gemara here, women are obligated midoraita in Kiddush, which is why they are able to be yotza a man when the need arises.
Okay, thank you.
Right, now let's carry on. Where were we?
Sorry. Just before the original pasuk you were quoting,
refer to Al Horitza Tova Asher Natan Lach? Is there any
No,
significance on the
no,
Lach there?
no. It's very confusing because you have in the same pasuk places where lach and lecha are there, and
We're often interchanging when we speak talking about God, but this is the other way around, where it's saying what he's done.
yeah, I don't think there's any significance to that at all.
It's a grammatical thing,
It's a what?
a grammatical thing.
Grammatical. isn't
Why
it?
is it grammatical?
I don't exactly know why, but I raised it in the Shiur somewhere else, yeah. And it was lach, and therefore, the rabbi said, no, it's lach or lecha for grammatical reasons.
Could well be, mate. Yeah.
I think if you're laning and you've got it and lach wrong, it's not wrong.
No, it's not.
No.
You can unless actually it's actually talking about a woman.
Oh, okay.
Right, so let's say you were talking. The laning was talking about, I don't know, I can't think of one, but let's say there was
Miriam.
let's say there was a lach with Miriam or a lach with Sarah or something like
Then it
that.
has to be.
Then it wouldn't make sense. But in the case there, they're definitely interchangeable. There's one pasuk, can't remember exactly where it is, where it talks about bikurim, and it talks about you have to take the tena biyadecha. Right, you have to take the basket in your hand and you have to give it to the Kohen. And in that same pasuk, it's got lecha and lach. Every time I lane it, I get it the wrong way around. Right, and every time Ruby jumps on me, even though it doesn't make any difference. But there you go. Right, so where were we now? I don't know, where were we? Mezuman, that's right. Mezuman for women. Right, so women can make their own mezuman, but they can't join in a man's mezuman. Again, not because of any sexist reason, but because of the, in the same way as somebody who's not a bar chiyuva cannot be yoked to somebody else.
So they shouldn't answer?
No, they can answer.
They can answer.
They can answer. No problem with answering, because, you know, when you're answering, what are you saying? Rabotai nevarech, Baruch, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevorach Me'atav Olam. What does that mean? May Hashem's name be blessed. Nothing wrong with saying that. Okay, so there's no problem
If
with
there's
it.
10 women
Do they say Elokeinu?
and wine,
When there's a minion.
I would imagine so. I don't know. I've never looked that up. I imagine so. Why not? If they're saying a Mezuman, then the Elokeinu is part of that Mezuman. I would imagine the answer would be
When
yes.
there's a minion. When there's a
Yeah,
minion.
yeah. So if there's a minion of women, I imagine, David, the answer is that, but I haven't checked. All right, let's talk now. Let's go actually get intervention for once, right? Let's start the actual first bracha. Okay, what is the origin of this bracha according to the Gemara? According to the Gemara, who instituted this first bracha?
Abraham, no?
No, not Abraham.
Moses.
Moses.
Moshe, yeah.
Moshe. Yes, Moshe.
One or the other.
The first blessing was allegedly, according to tradition, composed by Moshe Rabbeinu. When do you think he might have composed this bracha? Well, let's read the bracha first. Read the bracha. Who's going to read the bracha? Read the David. Read the Hebrew for you. What have you got there? Sachs translation.
I've got no translation.
You have no translation. Okay, who's got the Sachs? Jeff, you've got it. Yeah.
I have.
Okay, Jeff. Read us the
In English?
read us the Hebrew and translate it as you go along.
Okay. Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech olam. Blessed are you, Lord our God.
A
Hazon,
bit louder. Jeff.
Hazon et olam kulo v'tuvo v'chein v'chesed v'rachmim.
Right, stop there. Hazan et haolam.
Who nourishes the whole world.
His goodness feeds the whole world.
Hazan et haolam kulo, the whole world. Betuvo, with his goodness.
This is with grace, actually. Well, no, it's goodness. His goodness.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah, with grace. V'chein,
V'chein, grace.
kindness, chesed,
Chesed, kindness.
and compassion.
Rachamim.
Mercy.
Okay, right,
Passion?
stop there.
Rachamim is passion?
Compassion.
Oh,
Passion.
compassion. I thought you said passion.
Okay, so what have we said so far? We're blessing Hashem, who feeds the whole world. Hazan et haolam kulo, who feeds the whole world, betuvo, with his goodness. Now, when it says the whole world, what does it mean? Yeah, well,
Couldn't you say kulo in his completeness? in his
Hazan et haolam
kulo.
kulo. Hazan et haolam kulo. In his could be, I don't think.
It's our lumkula.
Hazan et haolam kulo.
It's
Yeah,
there.
not- yeah.
Hazan is not feeds,
Sustains. Zan.
nourishes.
What's the difference?
You could feed
Different things.
You get nourishment from food.
No, he maintains the world, like grass and rocks and things like that are
Oh, okay.
also
All right.
sustained
okay.
by
I see
God.
what you mean. Okay, I understand.
Even people who are starving are sustained somehow or other.
So Hazan et olam kulo. If we say that Moshe Rabbeinu instituted this first bracha,
All right, when they get the man.
when he got the man, that is when Moshe Rabbeinu is said, according to tradition, to have authored this bracha when the man first fell. This was a massive miracle.
Yeah.
And what do we do when we see a miracle? We bless Hashem for the miracle. And he said, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hazan et haolam kulo b'tuvo b'chein b'chesed u'rachmim. You have graciously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, provided this man for us. You know, it's like manna from heaven, right? It was an amazing thing. Okay, carry on.
Who noten lechem l'chol basar?
Okay. Who noten lechem l'chol basar? Not lechem. Lechem would be, right? Lechem. Who noten lechem? He
Okay,
gives bread.
Well,
L'chol basar.
Yeah, but not every animal eats bread.
Okay, so
it says the translation he gives food.
okay, so lechem. We know what lechem is, don't we?
Well,
Yeah.
Bread.
yes.
Why does it say lechem? Because of
That's
what we
the-
already said. Bread.
It's the main part of the meal.
Yeah,
It's a
bread
staple.
is the word lechem means sustaining food,
Staple.
staple food. Yes. So the man was not lechem, wasn't it? Well,
It could be.
Midrash says it tasted of
But
whatever.
they made it taste whatever they wanted it, wasn't it? They could say,
You know, it's amazing how everybody knows that Midrash. I also learned it in nursery school, right? I learned in nursery school that, and I used to think that if I was there, I would have it taste, all my man would taste of chocolate ice cream, right? And then when I got a bit older, I wanted steak and chips, right? And now I'm a bit more sophisticated, want something else. But it's nonsense. The Midrash is nonsense.
Right?
Because it says in the Torah exactly, mufurash, what it tasted of. It tasted of honey, and it was wafers and honey. That's what it tasted of. It says, Batam, Dvash, it says it clearly what it tasted of. So that Midrash, which we all know from kindergarten, is not a Midrash to be understood literally. It's a Midrash that's meant to be understood to say that this food was so sustaining that it was as if it was whatever we wanted it to be. And of course, we know from the stories in the Torah that it wasn't whatever they wanted it to be, because they got sick of it, didn't they? And they said, we're sick of this stuff. I'm not surprised if it's taking them. You know, if you were given honey wafers every single meal, you'd have enough already. So it's funny, isn't it? That Midrash, probably the two most well-known Midrashim are, in my humble opinion, two which are not to be taken literally. There's that one, and the one that says Rivka was 3 when she got married, right? Which she wasn't, according to me and others. Okay, so but we all know that Midrash, don't we? I remember.
That opens a can of worms.
It opens a huge can of worms. I remember when we did Parashat Shiurim here before COVID, and I used to do on a Sunday morning. We used to do Parashat HaShavua. I can remember it like it was yesterday. Jeffrey Glasky was sitting exactly where Jeff is sitting there, and I said, "How old was Rivka when she got married?" And Julie said 3, and I said, "How do you know?" He says, "It's written." And I said, there's the Chumash, where it is. I said, don't bother looking, it's not there. It's in Rashi, of course. Rashi quotes the Midrash. Anyway, how did we answer that? Don't know. Oh, yes.
Midrashim are not.
Right, so lechem.
The
Lechem, right?
man.
Anotein lechem l'chol basar. So lechem, the word The word lechem in this context means food which is sustaining. Hanotein lechem lechol basar. He gives food to every flesh. What does that mean, lechol basar?
All flesh.
All creatures. Now,
Why use the word basar?
somebody once asked me a
It's
question.
living things here. So.
Yeah, living things, all creatures who need, if they're not living, they don't need lechem, do they? They don't need sustaining. But Philip's right, not all animals eat bread. So that's why lechem here doesn't mean bread. It means sustaining food. Now, somebody once asked me a very, very good question. And I'd be interested to know what you think. We say in Ashrei, and in fact, some people, I bet Johnny does.
I asked you that question, I think.
How do you know?
The one before Poteach es yodecha.
Yes, was it you that asked the question? Okay, so Johnny will probably say this at the end of the first bracha of benching. Do you say Poteach et yadecha before bracha ta Hashem hazon et hakol, Johnny?
No, I don't. No,
No, it's part of Nusach Sfard. Thought you might.
no.
Nusach Ashkenaz don't, but we all say it in Ashrei 3 times a day. Poteach et yadecha umasbia l'chol charatzon. He who opens his hand and satisfies umasbia l'chol chai ratzon.
We say it at the end of Birkat.
We say it at the end, yes. So that's actually not benching anymore by then. It's finished.
Fine.
So the question Johnny asked me is, how can you say that's not true? There are starving people in the world. How can you say Hashem opens up his hand and satisfies every living being? Umasbia, from the same word as savata, umasbia, l'chol chai ratzon. How can you say that? A good question. Anyone got an answer?
Is it because it's in man's capability to make sure that he's got sufficient food? So if there isn't sufficient food, it's his fault. It's like
It's not the individual. It's not the individuals.
No, it's like
No, but that's a fair point. Mankind.
So we're responsible.
So we're responsible for feeding the famine nations. That's a fair answer. Anyone else got an answer?
That's not an answer.
But you have,
It is.
It's not an answer because
It's not.
he does not.
you have other
It's
Birkat, which you would say, like in the morning, who makes firm the steps of man. And unfortunately, there are people
Who don't have firm steps.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a good question. Somebody who doesn't have firm steps, let's say Tefilah, somebody's confined to a wheelchair and can't walk.
Yes.
Does he say that bracha?
No, but what you're saying, the brachot,
No,
like in Birkat Shachar, are not. You don't say specifically to everybody. And here it specifically says l'chol chai.
Yes.
Here it specifically puts in the word
So I mean
l'chol chai.
that's a fair answer in that bracha and your question raises the question as does a person who doesn't fit into that category say that bracha? For example, you can't say that it's just a generic bracha, because otherwise women would say Shilar Sani Isha, which doesn't make any sense.
So that's making us,
Yeah. So I think Jeff's answer is a nice answer. I've not heard that answer before. I think that's a nice answer. That
Nice man.
God does produce, does give us the facilities to feed all people, and those that aren't fed are because we haven't done it our job. I like that idea, but I think a perhaps more straightforward answer is that this is not a statement; it's a request. Poteach et yadecha, open your hand. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a request.
Yeah, I always thought it was a request.
Poteach et yadecha. Well, it depends how you read Ashrei. The whole of Ashrei can be read as statements, or it can be read as requests. So I think you have to say with Poteach et yadecha. I think that it's a request. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Poteach et yadecha. That's how I always understood it as well.
That's called.
Yeah, that's right.
You open.
We don't do it, but the Spartan do it.
You open your hand.
Art Scroll doesn't agree with you.
Oh well, that's not a surprise. Go on. What does Art Scroll say?
Because when it says ka'amur, it says as it is said, and then it's a statement. You open your hand and you satisfy. My question is, the desire is not necessarily food. Ratzon is what
No, but
the
it's clearly
person-
talking about food because it wouldn't be in there at the time. Okay, so Ka'amor, okay, very good. Let's just talk about this now. That's a very good point there. I said before that Johnny might say this pasuk at the end of this first bracha. You must have seen it in benches,
Yeah,
yeah?
it's in brackets.
All right, in brackets, right? Because some people do, some people don't. It's in there in that Rinat Yisrael. I think in Israel, most people who daven nusach Sfarad in Israel at least do say that. And of course, in this context, it makes sense to say Potech et Yedecha as a statement because you are speaking as a satisfied person, right? Now, something else that Johnny may do, and I do, even though I'm not a Sephardi, and I've told you why before, when I make Hamotzi, I do what the Sephardim do, and I say, Ka'amor, Potech et Yedecha masbil chol charatzon, and then I say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Why? Why do I do it? Because I'm doing it in memory of my uncle, Jeffrey Glassky's father, who we live next door to one another, and Friday night we always ate together in our house. Shabbat lunch I always ate in their house, and he said that he was a Spanish and Portuguese Sephardi origin, and that was his minhag. And so when I first got married, I took on that minhag in his memory because he was very dear to me. So that's why I say it, even though I'm Ashkenazi. So Ka'amor, as it is said, open up your hand and satisfy every living soul. Now, I think that's a nice thing to say before you start your meal, because what you're starting your meal, you're saying, I'm fortunate enough to have food. And it's a prayer, as I say it. That's how I see it and how I say it. It's a prayer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give the good fortune that I have to have a meal to every living soul. So
the pasuk before, Johnny, the pasuk before says that everyone looks up to you with hope, and you give them food in the right time. And the pasuk before at that,
where are you reading?
The pasuk before in Ashrei, sorry.
Right. Okay, yeah. So it follows on. It follows on. But here we're in benching. So right. So Hazan et haolam kulo b'tuvo v'chein b'chetzim rachmin hu noten lechem b'chol basar. He gives sustenance to all flesh. What's next, Jeff?
Ki leolam chasto.
Ki leolam chasto, because his kindness is forever. Okay, carry on.
Uvetuvo hagadol.
Uvetuvo hagadol, and in his great goodness.
Yeah.
Because of his continual great goodness.
Okay.
Tamid.
Uvetuvo hagadol tamid. Lo chasar lanu.
Nothing.
What does that mean?
Nothing. We miss nothing.
No, it does not mean
we have
that.
never
Lo
lacked.
chasar lanu.
We have never lacked food.
No,
It says we have never lacked food.
no, there's a difference.
What did I say?
We are not lacking. That's present tense. Lo chasar lanu. We
never.
have not lacked.
Okay.
Yes, it's in the past tense.
Yeah.
Lo chasar lanu.
Yeah.
We have never lacked in the past. Va'al yechsar lanu. And we will not in the future lack anything. So this is a bracha which is thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a dual purpose bracha.
Past and present.
We're thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for not having been lacking in food in the past and
not lacking in the future.
Praying for the future, as it were, and blessing it ahead of time, that we will not be lacking in the future. Lo chasar lanu va'al yechsar lanu mazon leolam va'ed. We will not be lacking in food leolam va'ed, forever and ever. Go on.
Ba'avur
shemo hagadol.
hagadol.
For the sake of your shemo, his great name, for the sake of his great name, we're talking in the third person here. Why are we talking in the third person?
Because
Because when you
Moshe.
speak about when I speak to you, I said Harav.
Yeah, quite
Harav
right. So you should.
Kishma.
So when you speak about an important person, you speak in the third person. You know, his Majesty, right? Harav, yeah. It used to really, I found it so off-putting. There were two things that I found really difficult when I was working as a doctor in England. The first thing is when the SEM girls would come in and they would refer to me in the third person. They would say, what would the doctor recommend? And what would the doctor suggest? And it was like, do me a favour. I couldn't concentrate on what I was doing because it just sort of didn't sound right at all. And worse than that, I was quite often privileged to treat big Rabbonim. Any big Rav that came to Manchester, they all seemed to get sick as soon as they came to Manchester.
I can understand that.
Yeah. And they all made their way to and then I used to try to do this third person business, you know, and sort of saying, you know, how is the Rav feeling? Could the Rav tell me where it hurts? But after a while, I was concentrating so much on calling him the Rav that I wasn't thinking about what I was meant to be thinking, and I just jacked it in and just said you. But so that's why it's Shemo Hagadol, because it's the kavod of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we're talking about. So Ba'avor Shemo Hagadol, for the sake of his great name.
Ki hu zan mafanes lakol.
Ki, because hu zan, he sustains.
Sustains, yeah.
Ufarnes.
And
what's that word? Farnes.
Mufarnes and gives
Provide
sustenance.
for-
Where's
Parnasa. Parnasa.
Parnasa, it's the same word as Parnasa. He gives Parnasa.
And sustains and sustains.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it sustains.
Umeitiv lakol.
Umetiv lakol. What's metiv?
And brings
It does.
brings welfare. Welfare. to
Yeah, it's
everybody.
the verb
Tov.
of tov.
So,
Tov is an adjective. Metiv
Lakol.
is to bring goodness. It's a verb. Umetiv lakol, and he brings to everybody.
Goodness, yeah. Umechum mozon.
Umechel.
Mechin.
Mechin mazon. What's mechin?
Prepares.
And he prepares mazon.
Food.
Lachol.
Lachol.
Briotav.
Briotav for all creatures.
All his creations.
All his creations.
All his
All
creations.
he has created.
Yeah.
Asher bara.
Asher bara, that he has created. Why do we need Asher bara after Briotav? Don't know. Before you ask
For
me.
all the
The
creatures
whole
he has
Briotav would have
created.
been good enough, wouldn't it? For all his creations.
To remind us that he created them.
Asher bara, that he created. I suppose you're stressing that he created.
The creatures he created, yeah. Baruch atah Hashem.
Okay,
Azot,
there, just before Baruch atah Hashem is where you would insert
the
Potecha Jadecha if you were going to insert it. Baruch atah Hashem.
Hazon
Hazan
Hakol.
et Hakol,
Who
who
feeds all.
blessed Hashem, who sustains everything. Now there is one opinion. There is one opinion. No, it's probably more than one opinion. There is an opinion. Let's put it that way. That is all you need to say for benching. That if you say that, you are yotze benching.
You're done.
Okay. You're with it. So when we were in school, I don't know about you, when I was in junior school and we used to chant it out loud, that was all we used to chant out loud. The rest, if you were from me, then you used to say the rest.
So is that
yourself.
why? Is that
And if
why?
you weren't, you used to run out and play football.
So when you do say in a communal sense, sometimes that's the thing you say out loud, and then everyone says or makes.
So the opinion that says that is benching, or that is the minimum amount for benching, you would say that whole thing out loud, and then the people at the end would say, Amen. So there you've overcome your problem for the person that doesn't know how to read, because he says Amen to your bracha, and if you've got in mind, which is what you're meant to do when the leader who's leading is meant to have in mind that anybody who needs to be yotze with my bracha, the person that makes kiddush, right, Dicky, when he makes kiddush, if he doesn't have in mind everybody to make kiddush, then you have to make your own.
Don't tell him to start again.
No, you'd either have to start again,
No.
or you'd have to make your own. You'd have to
Not
make.
make your own anyway. I know that's.
Should you not make your own anyway? You don't have to, as long as the kiddush maker has you in mind, and you have in mind to be yotze with his bracha, it's perfectly okay. When you go to somebody's house for Shabbos, right? And often people will go when people go to somebody else's house for Shabbos. Often the balabais will offer the person, "Do you want to make your own kiddush?" And some people are makpid to only make their own kiddush. I'm not, as it so happens, but some people are.
When I've heard Kiddush here, I still make it again at home.
So it's
Sound
not-
like
that's a
that.
different.
No, you shouldn't really.
Don't need to.
Yes.
You don't.
No, it's a mokum
But
suda.
for your wife.
Yeah.
sure.
No,
even
I'm
if it's
assuming your wife's here.
Isn't it mokum
Yes, she
suda?
is.
But you have to.
You've already had your Suda here.
No, I'm talking about,
Well, a piece of cake.
no,
On Shabbos morning, that's enough. Friday night's a different story. Friday night Kiddush in Shul, which we don't do
we don't
here.
do it, yeah.
We used to do it before Corona, then we stopped, never restarted. But when we did do it, it was done by a kid. Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Why?
Because then they
So
couldn't.
they-
So exactly so that you are not Yotza, in case you
Yeah,
might
yeah.
have thought you're Yotza.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? That is why a kid does it.
That's
And
why you have to
why
do it again.
if the Chazan makes it in the United Synagogue, the Chazan makes it,
Yeah.
who drinks the wine?
A kid.
Kid. Right? Because he is got in mind not to be Yotza himself and not to be Yotza anybody else who needs to be Yotza. Why?
Might say,
Because
yeah.
it's not a Mokum Suda, it's not a place of Suda. Shabbos morning, Kiddush, the food that you eat there, is considered enough for a Suda, because Kiddush on Shabbos morning is called, what's it called? Kiddusha
Rabba.
Rabbah, which means
Great.
the great Kiddush. What's all that about? Why is it called Kiddusha Rabbah?
Because you're mighty. You don't have to make Kiddush afterwards at home. You don't have
It's
to.
ironic.
Yeah.
It's an irony that it's called Kiddusha Rabbah, because it's not, right? It's a Kiddusha Rabbah, a great Kiddush. You don't actually need to make that Kiddush. That Kiddush on Shabbat is the Rabbanan. The Deoraita is the Friday night Kiddush. Okay?
Well, you're saying Shabbos morning I shouldn't make it again?
If there's nobody to be, if you were Yotze with Dickie's Kiddush,
Yeah.
and Angela was Yotze with Dickie's Kiddush,
Yeah.
when you get home, no, you shouldn't
don't
make
have to
Kiddush
make
again.
Kiddush, yeah,
You
yeah.
can say, but as it so happens, it doesn't make any difference.
Hmm.
I'll tell you why it doesn't make any difference, because the bracha, unlike Friday night, the bracha on Shabbat morning is what? What is the bracha?
Very well.
Huh?
Shabbat.
On Shabbos morning?
No.
What's your bracha?
On
The Shamru,
It's Brei Bri Hagafen.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have wine, you
Yeah.
need to make a Brei Bri Hagafen
Yeah.
as well. If you want to say before your Brei Bri Hagafen, V'shomru b'nei Israel, or lie, or Al Kain, or whatever you want to do, that's up to you. All you're doing is saying psukim. So the answer to your question is you do not need to make Kiddush when you go home. If, however, you want to have a glass of wine, you have to make a Brei Bri Hagafen.
And
So
if-
you do
if
not
so-
need
if
to make a
someone, if someone hasn't heard Kiddush,
That's different.
That's different. If somebody hasn't heard Kiddush, then you make the Kiddush, because the minhag, it's a dirabanan, it's a minhag to make the Kiddush, probably more than a minhag, it's a dirabanan. You make Kiddush on Shabbat morning, but you've already been Yotze here, you don't need to do it again.
do you have to actually be able to hear all of the Kiddush?
Yeah.
You have to be able to hear Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam b'rei Bri Hagafen. That's all you need to hear.
Because it's very difficult to hear
Oh, What
sometimes.
about if you don't eat any?
If you don't eat anything,
Which I don't.
if you don't eat anything at all, then you probably not been Yotze Kiddush, because you could have to have Kiddush b'makom su'udah, in a place of su'udah. Su'udah is called mezonot on Shabbat morning. You can be Yotze with that, with a piece of cake. But if you don't eat anything at all, then you would have to make Kiddush at home when you eat, yes. So answer your question again, since you don't eat anything, but what you should do is you should have in mind not to be Yotze with Dickie's Kiddush, because if you are Yotze with Dickie's Kiddush, then you have to eat something. And if you're not going to eat something, you know you're not going to eat something, which you know you're not because you never eat, then David said you do, but
In our friends made the Kiddush on Shabbos, so I thought I might have something.
okay. So in that situation, you would be Yotze with Dickie's Kiddush and you would eat. On the weeks when you don't eat and you know you're not going to eat, then you should not be Yotze with his
Right,
Kiddush.
I can make it again at home.
And you make it again at home. Okay. So the first bracha of benching is, according to some opinions, all you need. So when you are the leader of the benching, like for us, Sudash Lishit, Meir, okay, when he does that benching, I mean, he does every
He does
single,
everything.
he does the whole thing out loud, but he would have to do that first one, that first bracha, at least that first bracha. And anybody who didn't know how to bench or couldn't read or didn't know the words could then, he would have to have in mind anybody that around this table that wants to be Yotze, I'm Yotze him, doesn't have to say it, has to have it in mind. And the person has to have in mind that the sayer of the benching is Yotze him. And he says Amen, and he's done. Yes, Frank.
I was under the impression, which I picked up right or wrongly, that if you don't have a Zimun, you wouldn't say that first paragraph out loud.
Okay, if let's ask, can you ask the question slightly differently? If you have a Zimun, do you have to say that out loud?
Okay.
Okay, the answer is yes. Okay, because then you've already asked people to join you to bench.
Yeah.
So then you yoke to them in case they can't. Now, if you're all benching, let's say you have two of you, there's no Zimun, right? You just get on with it. But what if the person there doesn't know how to do it? Then you would do it for him by saying exactly that.
By
So
doing
let's
it
say-
aloud, by saying it aloud.
So by saying it aloud.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so you're with somebody who you know, for example, doesn't know how to bench, and you would then do it with him in mind, and hopefully he would have in mind that you would do it for him. But you're right. Technically, you're on your own. Without a Zimun, you're on your own. You wouldn't say it out loud.
Just go back to talking about the third person. Shema, his name.
Yeah.
But then you go on and say Baruch Atah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not really.
Not consistent.
And in the mornings, I always get confused because in the mornings it says, what my book says, and what I'm used to saying is Es Shimcha. But they all say here Es Shemo.
Right. And also in if I'm not mistaken, in Barech Aleinu, V'sabeinu mituvecha, or V'sabeinu mituvo. Different again. Tuvecha, I think in Ashkenaz. In the Sfad, Nusach Sfad, it's third person. So it's clearly not consistent. You're right. It's clearly not consistent.
The response, though, so you said Baruch Atah Hashem, the response is Baruch Hu.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Baruch
Baruch Atah Hashem, Baruch Hu, Baruch Shemo. Blessed is, because they mentioned the name Baruch Atah Hashem, right?
Yeah.
So it's like me saying, I spoke to Frank, and he would say, "Oh, he's a good fellow." Right? Or not.
Sounds like a film I once saw. Goodfellows.
Okay. So right. So the first bracha was traditionally ascribed to Moshe Rabbeinu at the time when the man first came down, and that is the ikar of benching. That is the main part of benching, and it talks about food. Now we're not going to do this now because we're time's up, but we're going to next time we talk about benching, we'll talk about the second bracha. But let's just a little taster, if you'll pardon the pun. Read for us, Jeff, the end of the second bracha, just the chotemet, just the last bit. The Baruch Atah Hashem.
Hang on, which bit? Because okay.
The next bracha that
okay.
comes.
Baruch Atah Hashem al haaretz hamazon.
Okay, so the second bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, al haaretz, for the land, va'al hamazon, and on the food. So now in the second bracha, we're going to expand our horizons. In our first bracha, we've spoken about
food
and only food. Now we're talking about the land and food. We're expanding.
It could be the food that comes from the land.
Exactly.
Okay. So we're going to see next time that this will tell you who instituted the second bracha and why, and the implications of expanding the bracha from food to the land and food. And that will be next time, which hopefully, next week we're going to do the thing. After that will be
Cholamoid.
But the kids
Cholamoid will probably be difficult.
3 weeks.
It'll be after Cholamoid, yeah.
3 weeks.
So after the first Monday after Pesach.
What's next Monday then?
Next Monday is a shiur on whiskey.
I don't think that should take.
We've
We've done it before. We've done it before. It's been done before. It's very good fun. And you all bring